being on stream is that people will be able to see your match. So Jean Paul might have to go into this turn or going into this match knowing that hey, some of my secret techs might be revealed. Maybe my Rayquaza set has been revealed because he is currently piloting that really popular Xerneas Rayquaza core. When I say popular, I mean I've seen it once, so.
Hey, it won the Europe International Championships. That's pretty good.
Yeah.
Some of the other Pokemon on his team are interesting. I've got 2 different grass types with Cortana and Amoonguss. That sort of strategy was really popular earlier this season when especially Choice Scarf Kyogre was a bigger threat. Obviously, the meta has shifted a little bit. Both those Pokemon still strong, and kind of also Pokemon that many players are packing fewer counters for. On Javier's side, the Gastrodon not going to like to see that double grass type. You probably won't see too much of it in this matchup, although it does have a pretty good matchup against some of his other Pokemon, actually almost all of his other Pokemon. Also get to see that Mandibuzz, Pokemon we don't see a whole lot of, and even Metagross is not the frequent contender at the video game championships that maybe it used to be.
Yeah, Metagross, it has a great matchup against Xerneas. It can resist a lot of Rayquaza's attacks. Obviously has to watch out for the random fire or earth power. So, Metagross is, I actually saw a lot, I believe, going into this. Both players already locked in. They already know what they want to do. I mean, they've probably played before at, other international championships. So they both probably have a good idea as to how each other play. Jean Paul hailing from Peru, Javier hailing from Chile. So here we go now, getting ready to jump into this match. I'm excited, Scott. These 2 players, the best from Latin America. So Javier going to go ahead and lead with Xerneas and Metagross. Like you mentioned, it's not really a Pokemon that we see too often in this format of VGC, as Tapu Koko and Incineroar are the leads that Jean Paul decides to lead with.
A lot of potential offensive pressure in the field here. Metagross has that clear body ability, so he's about to block Incineroar's fake out, or Intimidate rather, has that fake out pressure on Incineroar's side of the field. But as a Mega Evolved Pokemon, Metagross can be able to deal a lot of damage. You don't want to allow Xerneas to get the Geomancy up, Tapu Koko often holding his E-Crystal, so lots of damage being threatened both ways. One thing to keep in mind as you watch Javier, if you haven't seen him battle before, kind of famous for giving Pokemon moves and especially items that maybe you wouldn't be expecting. Even if you do know what he has, actually playing against it is a different experience.
Xerneas over on Javier's side switches out as Tapu Fini takes field. Going to go ahead and reset that terrain so that Tapu Koko won't be dealing as much damage. Obviously not quite the best switch because, Tapu Koko will still be doing massive amounts of damage, but Tapu Koko this turn instead decides to just go ahead and protect itself. Doesn't want to risk anything at all as Metagross uses Protect here. Not going to want to risk taking big damage from the Incineroar here. As Incineroar uses Snarl, going to go ahead and hit into that Tapu Fini slot. It is going to go ahead and drop that special. Nope, doesn't even hit it. Missed it.
Tapu Fini nimbly dodging out of the way there, and we get a completely dead turn. No more fear of fake out from Javier, but definitely fear of electric type attacks going into that Tapu Fini slot. He at least gets rid of the electric terrain, but he's not scared at all, I guess.
Yep, Metagross going to go ahead and Mega Evolve here. Going to go ahead and become Mega Metagross with that Tough Claws ability. Loses that Clear Body ability, but also gets a really nice speed boost here, as it looks like Tapu Koko is going to go for a Gigavolt Havoc. Even though it's not in that electric terrain, it's still going to be doing massive amounts of damage to this Tapu Fini. Javier not fearing it at all. Maybe just willing to sacrifice his Tapu Fini right now, just possibly to get a trade here. So here comes this big Gigavolt Havoc straight into that Tapu Fini, so big damage. That's probably going to be the KO. Yep, outright the KO. So Tapu Fini falling so fast after just switching in to reset the terrain, as Metagross is going to go ahead and use Hammer Arm here. Going to go ahead and hit into that Incineroar slot. Breaking, wow, that is good damage right there. Going to go ahead and drop Metagross' speed as Incineroar munches away on its berry.
Yeah, not quite enough there, and almost the worst amount of damage you can do to Incineroar, able to heal up with that berry, get the U-turn off, and bring that Intimidate back out of the field to use again later.
Yeah, so of course, one of the downsides of Mega Metagross is that you also sacrifice Clear Body, which is such a great ability. It allowed Mega Metagross to be able to do that much damage, and now Xerneas is going to go ahead and take the field, which Metagross has a pretty good matchup against.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of interesting. Yeah, there's 2 Pokemon that you kind of like matching Metagross up with a little bit, especially, Tapu Koko already used its Z-move, lost its terrain, and then when we see Xerneas coming on the other side, Javier, at least, he's improved the positioning on the board some. Gave up a Pokemon to do it, but Tapu Koko now much less threatening than it was before, and, Metagross, at least for now, avoiding any problems with Incineroar, though I wouldn't be too surprised to see it come back in, get the Intimidate off, and add in the threat of fake out.
Yeah, and of course, you know, Mega Metagross' speed has actually dropped, so it's actually slower than that Xerneas. Obviously, Xerneas won't be able to do much, but just important information to know for later on, as Xerneas here outspeeding that Tapu Koko, going to go ahead and go for a Moonblast. Does big damage, gets the KO on that Tapu Koko outright. That is a Choice Scarf Xerneas.
So maybe no Geomancy after all then.
Yeah, no Geomancy over on Javier's side, so that's interesting.
Yeah, that's a tough spot where, again, you know, I mean, maybe you know the items, maybe you don't. But if you don't, yeah, you're certainly not concerned about Tapu Koko being knocked out before it can use a probable Volt Switch there. And then Metagross staying on the field. The positive thing for John Paul, maybe not the worst thing in the world, that he gets Amoonguss out for free, able to use almost definitely a Rage Powder here. With Tapu Koko knocked out, that Misty Terrain is going to make Spore a non-factor for at least a little while.
Yeah, and Rayquaza is going to go ahead and take the field for Javier's side, going to reset that Xerneas maybe doesn't want to lock into a Moonblast with that Amoonguss over on the other side of the field, as well as having that Rayquaza being able to deal with that Amoonguss much better. As Amoonguss uses Rage Powder here, going to go ahead and draw away single target attacks as Jean-Paul's Xerneas. Easy setup chance here. Going to go for that Geomancy and get its boost. So that's one of the great things about Amoonguss here, especially against, you know, a locked Xerneas and a Mega Metagross here, as Mega Metagross now is going to go for an Iron Head, just going to go ahead and hit into that Amoonguss slot. Does pretty decent damage right there, about 40%.
Yeah, I mean, not bad, but I feel like you're pretty happy with that, John Paul. And not having to give up all that much damage at all to get that Geomancy off, and now Javier's in a tough spot. You know, it seemed like maybe he'd baited John Paul a little bit by having that Choice Scarf on the Xerneas, but perhaps the baiter has become the baitee. Incineroar coming in now, providing you more fake out support, probably going to see a Protect from Xerneas, and John Paul's board position just gets better and better.
Incineroar taking the field here with a really nice Intimidate on the Rayquaza and that Mega Metagross as Xerneas protects itself. Again, Jean Paul just trying to maintain board position here. That's going to be big against that Rayquaza, going to weaken the amount of damage that this Dragon Ascent can do here, as Dragon Ascent from Javier's side goes ahead and hits into that Incineroar. Does good damage right there. No berry since it's already eaten it, so you know, one hit away as Metagross goes for an Iron Head into that Xerneas Protect as the mist disappears from the field. So, you know, now Amoonguss is going to be able to come in and Spore freely.
You also get out of battle, so that regenerated ability is going to activate, restore some of Amoonguss' health. The one positive thing for Javier, at least you didn't have to use any protects that turn, so you can try to stall out this fake out turn potentially if you want. Rayquaza not going to be able to Mega Evolve. Not a sight we see too often in the video game championships anymore, but since he is using Metagross alongside it and it's already Mega Evolved, it'll just be the original Rayquaza hanging out in this battle.
Definitely a much better option, though, to Mega Evolve that Metagross, since it has such a much better matchup against the Xerneas, as Javier now switches in his own Xerneas as well, so going to try to match Xerneas here as Rayquaza forced to protect itself. Doesn't want to get KO'd just yet or take massive amounts of damage depending on how this Rayquaza is trained. As Incineroar now uses Fake Out, hits into that Xerneas slot as Xerneas on Jean Paul's side. No Geomancy just yet, just going to go for a Dazzling... Oh no, it already set up Geomancy, sorry. It just goes for a Dazzling Gleam here and does big amounts of damage.
Yeah, that hurts a lot. Certainly, the Choice Scarf going to get trumped by Geomancy as far as how much speed it contributes, and Xerneas not looking like it's going to be able to survive another Dazzling Gleam from here.
Rayquaza forced to switch out, doesn't want to get KO'd just yet. Metagross will be able to take this Dazzling Gleam a lot better, but Incineroar can also follow up with an attack as well and deal massive amounts of damage here as Jean Paul Xerneas uses Dazzling Gleam, gets a KO on Javier's, Xerneas, but of course that also did a lot of damage to that Metagross as well. Probably in range from a Moonblast here as Incineroar uses U-turn, so really good board position right now for Jean Paul, especially since he gets his Amoonguss right back in.
Yeah, I mean, he's kind of just playing the safe. Doesn't need to do anything too crazy. Xerneas easily going to be able to finish this one out, probably well protected by this Amoonguss and Incineroar combination. Sort of the most classic of VGC 2019 strategies. You know, Incineroar keeps rotating out, getting those Intimidates, allowing Amoonguss to switch out of battle and get those Regenerator boosts. Really safe play by John Paul, since allowing the Tapu Koko to be knocked out. One of these games where it seems like allowing a knockout has given him the board position he needs to win the game.
Rayquaza takes the field for Javier now, so tough board position here for Javier. Really just expecting Xerneas to kind of sweep up right here.
Yeah, it's hard to imagine what Javier can do. It was a fun game, and you had to see that quick knockout from that Choice Scarf Xerneas, but perhaps Javier's going to have to try something a little bit different in game two. It's hard to imagine what moves he can make from here.
Amoonguss actually switches out. Incineroar takes the field, instead just cycling in one more Intimidate. Probably just expecting this to be the end game here, just making sure that, you know, this Intimidate sticks onto this Rayquaza and this Mega Metagross here as Mega Metagross protects itself as Xerneas now gets to go ahead and make a move. Just going to go straight for Moonblast into that Metagross Protect, though. Here comes Rayquaza, going to go for a Dragon Ascent. Probably going to hit down into what was that Amoonguss slot here, as it does, and it gets KO on that Incineroar. But again, that Intimidate was so big.
Yeah, some of the things are getting interesting, though, or at least there's kind of a way you can imagine this game ending in Javier's favor, where Rayquaza gets to pick up a knockout for free. Now Amoonguss has to come in, no longer any threat of a Intimidate from here. Or getting you more health from Regenerator. The one problem is, I'm curious what Amoonguss' item is. Most commonly we see it hold a Focus Sash now. If it were to hold one, it's at full health again, so it would work. We also see Focus Sash on Rayquaza a lot, which could be a big deal in this game. So, again, it'd be interesting to see, do either of these Pokemon have the item? If they do, does the opponent know? And how do they play around it? Metagross also is still in range, where Moonblast is probably going to knock it out. You got to figure for Javier to win the game, it's got to attack at least once.
Yeah, and you might have to... It's a tough call. It's really tough. There's so many different moving pieces here.
I feel like you got to go for the double protect if you're Metagross and just hope things happen right around you.
Yeah, there goes for protect. Gets it actually.
Hey, there you go.
Is the Moonblast gonna be is it gonna be used first off to target down the Metagross here as Amoonguss uses Rage Powder here? Xerneas actually just goes for a Dazzling Gleam, just trying to chip away at that Metagross, and of course hit this Rayquaza for big damage. Goes ahead and activates the Focus Sash on that Rayquaza. So, now Rayquaza gets to go for one Dragon Ascent. It is intimidated. How much damage is it going to do to this Amoonguss, though? Despite the Intimidate, Amoonguss hangs on pretty healthily right there, and that should do it for Jean-Paul.
Yeah, Intimidate, as it turns out, is the best Focus Sash. Amoonguss not even getting close to being knocked out there, and importantly, could potentially even survive at extreme speed. Not even really out with any sort of priority shenanigans from here, it looks like. Really well-played game by Jean-Paul. Doesn't take any unnecessary risks, allows his Pokemon to restore as much health as possible, and you see the dividends of all the Intimidate and Regenerator shuffling he did over the course of that match.
Yeah, of course, well played by Jean-Paul. Javier really just went down early, right? He just had absolutely no way to deal with the Amoonguss and the Xerneas once set up that Geomancy and really just cycling those Intimidates. Of course, Javier also lost Tapu Fini so fast. It really just came in, switched in, and changed that terrain, and then it got KO'd immediately by Gigavolt Havoc. So, Javier might want to rethink what he does with that 4th slot and how he's going to utilize it.
Yeah, I think you really see something about this team matchup there, where you kind of mentioned in the open, it's really tough to pick Gastrodon against a team that has 2 Grass-type Pokemon, but that's his only resist against Electric-type attacks, so maybe he has to take that risk. Maybe if you're Jean-Paul, you try to call that, maybe bring in another one of your Grass-type Pokemon with Kartana there. I don't think that was necessarily an unwinnable matchup for Javier, although having to take a super effective Gigavolt Havoc is not great. But he's going to have to try to get a better early game there. It's so tough to break through that core of Amoonguss, Incineroar, and Xerneas once you've already given up the Geomancy, because you have to worry about taking so much damage in return while the other side doesn't really has any danger, so they can keep playing defensively. I think he's going to need to put Jean-Paul a little bit more on the defense to have a shot at this one.
Yeah, and you definitely have to figure out a better way to deal with that Geomancy Xerneas, because Metagross has a great type advantage, but it took so much damage just from a Dazzling Gleam. A Dazzling Gleam and a Moonblast is enough to get the KO on Metagross, and that's problematic.
Definitely, and I think it's interesting, too, to keep in mind how Jean-Paul played that game. That was very, very conservative, where even in the turn where Incineroar and Metagross were alone, he didn't opt to attack the Metagross, instead opting to preserve Incineroar for as long as possible. I think of Javier, maybe I'm trying to find ways to get some cheap damage on that Incineroar earlier in the game, so either I could pick up a knockout with that Hammer Arm, or just get rid of it before it can cycle all those Intimidates.
And here we go now, jumping into Game 2, Javier trying to desperately force Game 3. Going to lead with Tapu Fini and Xerneas as Tapu Koko and Incineroar take the field for Jean-Paul's side. So change up here for Javier. Jean-Paul still going with the, Tapu Koko and Incineroar, tried and true.
Yeah, I kind of like this adjustment by Javier. Not only does he get rid of it electric terrain immediately without having to immediately put Tapu Fini in danger, but at least it gives you the option of baiting a Z-move with Gastrodon where, it's got to be in the back of Jean-Paul's mind now, right? Even if he doesn't have Gastrodon, at least he has to be aware of it, so maybe he doesn't click the button even if Gastrodon isn't there. It's going to be important to try to find a way to mitigate that. All of these Pokemon are going to take a lot of damage from a Z-move, and it's so critical for them to stay healthy. However, got to worry about the Choice Scarf Xerneas also. That's what he decides to deal with this time.
Incineroar goes for a fake out into that Xerneas, makes it flinch. Obviously, that Xerneas we saw picked up a big one-hit knockout on this Tapu Koko with a Choice Scarf Moonblast?
Yes.
And now here comes a Gigavolt Havoc from Jean Paul's Tapu Koko. That's just going to be an outright KO again onto that Tapu Fini if it does target it down. So big damage being dealt here onto Javier's side of the field. It just connects with that Tapu Fini and outright gets the KO.
Yeah, John Paul not scared at all of any potential Gastrodon in the back. Just goes for the easy knockout. And I'm not so sure. We're basically in the same spot we were on turn 3 last game, just a turn ahead.
They're speeding things up for us.
Yeah, and it's I don't know how this works from here. I mean, last time we saw Moonblast KO Tapu Koko, Hammer Arm failed to KO Incineroar, and then things kind of just fell apart from there. You'd assume Javier is planning on doing something different this time, but he's basically put himself in the same spot as the previous round.
Yeah, so Metagross going to go ahead and Mega Evolve here, going to get that Tough Claws ability and get a nifty speed boost, as you might say. So Mega Metagross hitting the field right now. Again, you know, this is exactly kind of what we saw in Game 1, but instead Dazzling Gleam from that Xerneas. That is actually going to be enough here to change things up just a little bit as Tapu Koko goes for a Volt Switch here in that Mega Metagross now, as that chip damage is exactly what Mega Metagross needed for this Hammer Arm to get the KO, if it connects.
Yeah, much wiser move. I mean, Hammer Arm can miss, but yeah, this will allow him to knock out the Incineroar, remove the problems he had last game with Intimidate entirely, then just needs to find a way to deal with this Amoonguss.
Yep, and here comes the Hammer Arm from that Mega Metagross, gets a big KO on that Incineroar. Gonna go ahead and drop the speed of that Mega Metagross, though.
Yeah, I mean, don't like to see that, but this is definitely a better spot. Now, even if Xerneas comes in, Amoonguss' Rage Powder isn't going to be able to stop that Choice Scarf Xerneas from at least dealing some damage with Dazzling Gleam before the opposing Xerneas is able to get up its special defense stat with Geomancy. Still not great. Like, I don't know if that's exactly a winning trade. Metagross, unless it knows a Psychic type attack, and typically if you see a Metagross away from Tapu Lele, it doesn't. Not going to probably be able to knock out Amoonguss anyway, so this is better, but I'm still not sure I see Javier's plan.
Jean Paul pretty content with just going for the Rage Powder here as Xerneas on Javier's side goes for the Dazzling Gleam. Going to go ahead and chip away at that Amoonguss. Does decent damage to that Xerneas, but now Xerneas is going to be boosted by this Geomancy. And now it comes down to how is Javier going to deal with this Geomancy Xerneas, because that is what gave him issues in the last game. But it looks like Jean Paul just, you know, kind of just in the same boat here, just without the Incineroar.
Yeah, I mean, not having Incineroar there is crucial. I mean, Javier was able to play defensively well enough to make that last game close. He did get a double protect last game, which you can't count on happening again this time. And yeah, that's not good. Amoonguss looks like it's healthy enough where even if he were to like protect Dazzling Gleam, Amoonguss probably survives here, and he probably needs that one.
Yeah, and here we go. Metagross now using Protect. Not going to want to take any damage from this Xerneas just yet. You know, again, Dazzling Gleam and a Moonblast should be enough to seal the deal on that Metagross here. As the Moonblast actually, from Jean Paul's side, lands into that Javier Xerneas. Big damage, gets a KO outright right there. So, wow.
Excellent
big
play.
damage. Excellent play from Jean Paul.
Yeah, he doesn't even risk it, right? Whereas like, well, yeah, I don't want to take that Dazzling Gleam damage anyway, so I'm just going to use Moonblast instead of Dazzling Gleam, anticipate that Protect, and deal with you without ever having to take any damage in return. I guess Jean Paul maybe having to play a little bit more aggressively with that Incineroar there to just totally slow this game down, but still, he gets this nice big advantage, and he's got 3 Pokemon left against Javier's 2.
Rayquaza takes the field here. That is, you know, kind of switching in a little late here because, you know, that Dragon Descent would have been really nice a couple turns ago as Xerneas now protects itself. And here we go, Rayquaza just using Dragon Descent into that Xerneas Protect, though, as Metagross uses Iron Head. Going to go ahead and target down the Amoonguss. Is it going to be enough to get the KO? It is enough, so that is big because otherwise that Amoonguss could have put that Rayquaza to sleep with a Spore as the mist disappears.
Yeah, I like that play there where it's kind of cute by Jean Paul there. Maybe you get a cheap one. Definitely would have won him the game. Sadly not, but he does get Tapu Koko out for free. Vastly weakened, but perhaps able to take down these Pokemon. One thing to keep in mind is that unlike last game, Metagross is avoid taking a bunch of unnecessary damage. It's still taking some, but perhaps it's just healthy enough. Both these Pokemon are typically taught moves with increased priority, so even though Tapu Koko is naturally going to be the quickest Pokemon in the field, and Xerneas as well with its speed boost, you have to look for Bullet Punch and Extreme Speed.
Bullet Punch from the Mega Metagross gets a KO on Tapu Koko, so Javier kind of slowly bringing this one back as looks like Xerneas now uses Dazzling Gleam, gets the
Focus Sash.
Focus Sash, so this might be it. I think Javier actually has it sealed with that Bullet Punch.
Yeah, he played this one pretty well, where it seems like he just was able to squeak this one out. I think John Paul realized he was falling behind, so he tried to play with Amoonguss, but it's not quite going to be enough. And there's no way this Xerneas is going to survive a bullet punch from here. Really well played from Javier, it seems. These games are just so quick. It's hard to figure out how it's really going to close out, but he ended up with just enough health to finish this one.
Wow. You know, bullet punch, a move that isn't the strongest, but coming from a tough claws Metagross, that actually does some pretty decent damage, especially against Xerneas and, you know, much more frail Pokemon like this Tapu Koko. As Metagross uses Bullet Punch here, hits that Xerneas, and now, Scott, we're going to Game 3.
Yeah, how about that, huh? Really interesting match. Be curious to see if we see adjustments at all.
Yeah.
Seemed like we were on pace to see exactly the same game in Game 2 that we did in Game 1, but you know, all the difference that game was Javier changing one decision. Instead of using Moonblast to knock out that Tapu Koko and kind of get a greedy knockout that maybe he didn't really need, using Dazzling Gleam instead, getting much more important damage on Incineroar so he could pick up that knockdown and breaking down John Paul's defensive core.
Yeah, so smart play right there from Javier to really adjust. Jean Paul now has to try to figure out what he can do. I mean, again, as we mentioned before, both these games, Javier really just let that Tapu Fini get KO'd outright. So it might be a completely different game if Javier actually decides to protect this Tapu Fini.
It's sort of an interesting thought here. It's like, is the right play for him just to allow Tapu Fini to be knocked out?
Is the right play for Javier to just play with 3 Pokemon?
Yeah, because like it seemed like it worked that time, right? Like, I knew if he clicked Dazzling Gleam the first game, maybe it works then too. Like, maybe the secret is you got right, whatever. I need to get rid of the Z move. Fine, have this Pokemon. I don't need that one.
And that's true. It is drawing away the Z move from Jean Paul's side, and it is resetting the terrain. But
yeah,
you
I mean, hey, you always think about Tapu Fini as a supportive Pokemon.
it's doing its job. It's a pseudo Rage Powder, right?
That's right.
Here we are. Ooh, Scott.
Hey, our
Guess
boy
what just hit the
Gastrodon's
field?
here.
Yeah, Gastrodon's here. Javier now making some more adjustments here, really not using that Tapu Fini anymore. Instead, going for the Electric Immune Gastrodon here, as Xerneas also takes field. Tapu Koko's Electric Surge is going to go ahead and activate. Finally gets to say in the train as Incineroar and Tapu Koko are leads for Jean Paul.
Yeah, so not seeing any attempted Z-move baits this time, as Xerneas can't protect as a Pokemon holding a choice item. Gastrodon very immune to electric type attacks. I would guess because of this lead, it's probably Tapu Fini that's missing. Perhaps Javier opting to play with 4 Pokemon this time instead of 3.
How much damage is a Gigavolt Havoc from Tapu Koko going to do to Xerneas? That's a hypothetical question that I throw out every once in a while as Rayquaza.
But it's going to take this Rayquaza down to the focus session, pretty sure.
Definitely.
Unless Fake Out comes in, that's just a knockout.
Yep, so here we go. Incineroar goes for the Fake Out. And
Oh,
Tapu
no,
Koko
he doesn't go for it.
Tapu Koko just goes for a Volt Switch here, not going to go ahead and put all the eggs in one basket and go for a Gigavolt Havoc instead, just doing some damage onto that Rayquaza. As now Gastrodon gets to have some fun out on the field here, can threaten that Incineroar with an Earth Power or a Scald, as Amoonguss is going to go ahead and take the field here, as Gastrodon uses Earth Power. Going to hit into that Incineroar. That's going to be important damage for that Mega Metagross later on, if Mega Metagross is here.
Yeah, I mean, I really like that Earth Power, though. I think there's a lot of temptation to go after the Tapu Koko instead. You know, it's a much easier Pokemon to knock out, but kind of, again, learning from Game 1, getting a knockout doesn't inherently help you win the game, right? It's all about you're moving closer to a winning board state. That damage on Incineroar is way more important. We saw what happened in Game 1 if Incineroar stuck around for too long. Getting all this damage on Rayquaza isn't awesome, but it hasn't seemed like that critical of a Pokemon in this matchup, and he does want to get it matched up with Amoonguss. Tough for John Paul now to do anything with it. Don't want to face that down. And also there's a threat of Mega Evolution now because we haven't seen Metagross. It's at least an option for Javier.
Yeah, it's a tough call. I mean, if that Metagross is in the back, you know, Tough Claws is such a great ability, but Mega Rayquaza is just so strong. As Tapu Koko takes the field here, and Rayquaza uses Surf.
So that's a move we don't often see, but going to power up that Gastrodon, get some easy damage onto this Tapu Koko. Not a knockout on the Incineroar that was previously on the field.
But this does open up the opportunity for a Spore from the Amoonguss to land in that Rayquaza slot. That's a KO on Tapu Koko, though, and Gastrodon at one stage of increased special attack. Interesting to see out on the field here as Amoonguss goes for the Spore. So really one of Javier's best ways to deal with that Amoonguss is now taking a quick nap.
Yeah, I mean, it's not great, but not awful. I mean, Amoonguss definitely in a good spot here. No longer has to worry about those flying type attacks. And yeah, there you go. So yeah, there's the problem is that you know, kind of like we saw in the first game, knocking out Tapu Koko didn't actually help that much. It just allowed Xerneas to get in. Now we have a sleeping Rayquaza, and I don't know if Grassdrown is going to be able to blow through Amoonguss quickly enough to damage Xerneas very much, even with a boosted level of special attack from that Storm Drain.
Rayquaza now switches out. Metagross is going to take the field here as Amoonguss now uses Rage Powder, going to draw away any attacks from that Xerneas. As Xerneas uses Geomance here, going to go ahead and set up. Gastrodon does have access to Ice Beam, which can chip away at the Amoonguss, but, you know, I guess it is at one stage of increased special attack, though.
Yeah, I mean, this do some damage, but yeah, it's like, you know, it's kind of like we've seen these previous games. You know, how do you break down this defensive core, especially keeping in mind that Incineroar wasn't knocked out this time. It's only been weakened.
And here comes Ice Beam. That does good damage, actually.
Yeah, I don't mind that. That's, I mean, at the very least, it's easily a knockout if Amoonguss is to stay in, and Gastrodon is such a sturdy Pokemon that it's not trivial for Xerneas to deal with it, especially because it does have to be concerned about that Metagross. If both of the Pokemon Javier's side attack, you know, maybe Metagross can knock out Amoonguss, and you know, Gastrodon could try to damage Xerneas, but as a special attacker, it's not going to hurt too much.
Yeah, so Mega Metagross now goes ahead and takes the field, and Amoonguss uses Rage Powder again. It's going to draw away attacks, but yeah, so Xerneas now just going to go ahead and use Moonblast. Gastrodon is pretty especially bulky, but I don't think it's that especially bulky. Does not hang on at all. So here comes Mega Metagross, is going to go for the Iron Head. It is going to be able to get the KO onto the Amoonguss on Jean-Paul's side. So that is one huge threat removed from the field right there. So now down to Incineroar, which is going to come in with a huge Intimidate versus the Sleeping Rayquaza and that Xerneas over on Javier's side, as Xerneas on Javier's side takes the field.
Yeah, it's a really important knockout, but I'm not sure if it's going to be enough for Javier. Getting rid of Amoonguss is not as good as getting rid of Incineroar because of that Intimidate. You know, it's so important for Javier to be able to get attacks off with that Metagross onto Xerneas. No longer has to worry about redirection, but it kind of doesn't matter if you get intimidated enough that your attacks still don't do enough damage. It's going to be important for it to get whittled down on John Paul's side, but it's kind of tough to position if you're Javier now. Xerneas can't use Protect because it's holding a Choice Scarf. Rayquaza in the back is basically dead weight now. Javier just going to try to find a situation to switch it in probably and eat an attack so that one of his other Pokemon can survive a little bit longer. But with the threat of Fake Out here, this is tough. You know, you want to lose that Intimidate Metagross. I guess going to try to sacrifice Rayquaza this turn, but Xerneas may have to take a bunch of damage as a result.
Rayquaza now takes the field, just really sacrificing itself here so that Mega Metagross can come right back out and do some big damage, as Xerneas over on Jean-Paul's side just going for a Moonblast. Again, hitting in that Scarf. Xerneas just outright KOing it, and Rayquaza just sitting there, dead weight, as the Incineroar uses Flare Blitz here. Not going to be enough to get the KO, but again, Rayquaza just hangs on, really just there as a pivot so that, you know, this Mega Metagross can come right back in.
Yeah, I don't know if it's going to do it. I mean, the nice thing about this, if you're Javier, is that, you know, I guess it doesn't really matter what happens to Rayquaza. The one positive, though, I mean, Incineroar probably can't use Protect. Very few of them are taught this. A Hammer Arm hit would knock Incineroar out, and then at least you've got Xerneas isolated with Metagross and potentially Rayquaza, depending on what happens here. I guess on Javier's side, you hope Metagross survives some Moonblast, maybe get some Protects. Maybe Rayquaza wakes up very quickly. Depends on what John Paul decides to do, but this is a tough spot, and that's going to be the end of Rayquaza.
Yep, Xerneas now uses Dazzling Gleam. Big damage onto that Mega Metagross, of course. A Flare Blitz probably won't be able to get the KO on that Mega Metagross, as Metagross now uses Iron Head on that Xerneas. Is it going to be enough to get the KO? No! Oh. It hangs on, and Incineroar uses Flare Blitz. That is going to do it here for Jean-Paul, as that Flare Blitz even just gets a KO on Mega Metagross, so big damage right there. And Jean-Paul Lopez Buiza takes this set.
Yeah, really close set there. Fun match, man. So many attacks back and forth. Both those games were so quick and so close. Really fun, but Jean-Paul able to come out ahead, and you know, with him already being a game up on Javier, that's very good for his likelihood of making it to the top cut.
Excellent play that we've seen from him in day one and in day two. I mean, Javier also fought back for sure. Finally made that adjustment in game 3, but I mean, essentially